I was thrown out of my house during 12th grade for getting my girlfriend pregnant, told I was no longer family. I rebuilt my life from nothing and stayed silent for 25 years. Then one evening, my parents appeared at my door with lawyers, demanding to see a child they believed existed. What I said next stopped them cold, and changed everything that followed. Before I tell you how that moment unfolded and why it took a courtroom to finally close a wound that started in my teenage years, do me one small favor, support the channel and drop a comment saying where you're watching from. It helps stories like mine reach the people who need them most. Now let me tell you how it really began. The night my parents threw me out, the rain felt personal. Cold, heavy, relentless. It soaked through my hoodie, my shoes, my thoughts. I was 17, in 12th grade, standing on the porch of the only house I'd ever known, holding a trash bag filled with clothes I hadn't chosen and a future I didn't understand yet. My name is Evan Calder. Inside that house in Ashford, Pennsylvania, my parents were still sitting at the dining table. The pot roast smell lingered in the air, mixing with polish and old wood. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour earlier, which somehow made it worse. Nothing in that room reflected what had just happened to me. "You embarrassed us," my father, Richard Calder, had said, his voice flat, not raised. That was the part that scared me most. When he yelled, at least there was emotion. This was final. My mother, Elaine, wouldn't even look at me. She folded her napkin with careful precision, like she was afraid one wrong crease would make the whole world collapse. I told them Mila Rowan was pregnant. I didn't shout it. I didn't dramatize it. I said it the way you say something you believe honesty might save. "We'll take responsibility," I said. "I just need to finish school. I'll work. I'll do whatever it takes." My father stood up slowly, walked to the hallway, and came back with his wallet. He peeled off 2 bills and placed them on the table. "You have 10 minutes, he said. "Take this and leave." I stared at the money like it was counterfeit. "Dad? I'm still your son." That's when my mother reached up and turned the family photo on the mantel face down. The soft tap of the frame against the wood was louder than any shout. "We'll pray for you," she said quietly. "But you're not welcome here anymore." I didn't cry. Not then. Shock does something strange to you, it freezes everything in place. I grabbed the trash bag, my backpack, and the woven bracelet Mila had made me from green thread weeks earlier. I looked back once, just once, and saw my father already sitting down again, picking up his fork like dinner was just getting cold. The lock clicked behind me. That sound followed me for years. I walked until my feet hurt and my clothes clung to my skin. When my phone buzzed, I thought for one insane second it might be my parents telling me to come back. It wasn't. It was a message from Mila. No words. Just a blue heart and an address, Riverside Junction bus station. I ran. The station smelled like oil, metal, and exhaustion. It was almost 2 a.m. I sat on a plastic bench with my backpack between my feet, watching people come and go with places to be and people waiting for them. My phone rang once. Then again. Then went silent forever. That was the last night I tried calling Mila. I learned later that her parents had moved her out of state. No goodbye. No explanation. Just disappearance. At 17, I didn't have the power to chase her, and the people who should have helped me had already decided I was disposable. I slept sitting up that night, my head against the wall, dreaming of doors closing. The next morning, hunger drove me across the street to a diner with flickering lights and cracked vinyl booths. I ordered water and stared at the menu like it was written in another language. That's when Dorothy Hale sat down across from me without asking. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed, wearing a coat that had survived decades of winters. She looked at my soaked shoes, my shaking hands, and the way I avoided the window. "You got a family?" she asked. I hesitated. "Not anymore." She nodded like she'd already known the answer. "Then you need work, not pity." That's how I ended up washing dishes at Pine Hollow Lodge, a tired little place with peeling paint and stubborn pipes. Dorothy made it clear it wasn't charity. "You work," she said. "You eat. You lie or steal, you're gone." I worked like my life depended on it, because it did. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I finished my high school equivalency at night, studied between shifts, saved every dollar. Dorothy taught me things my parents never had, how to read people, how paperwork mattered, how silence could be stronger than shouting. One night, while we balanced the books, she told me something that stuck. "Families erase people all the time," she said. "But paper remembers." She showed me old legal files from her own life, documents that proved betrayal long after apologies had faded. That was the first time I realized what my parents had done wasn't just emotional. It was deliberate. Calculated. I worked my way up. Front desk. Night manager. Operations. I learned systems, logistics, data. I learned how power actually moved, quietly, through contracts and signatures, not speeches. By my mid-20s, I left Pine Hollow Lodge with Dorothy's blessing and a resume built on survival. I started small, consulting for struggling properties, fixing systems others ignored. I built a company piece by piece. No shortcuts. No favors. I named it Calder Systems, not because I was proud of my family name, but because I'd reclaimed it. Years passed. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I stopped checking the door when it rained. I stopped wondering if I was worth keeping. I built a life. Then, 25 years later, on a quiet evening in Blue Ridge Falls, Virginia, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door and saw my parents standing there with 2 lawyers and a folder thick with paper, I understood something instantly. They hadn't come back because they missed me. They had come back because they thought I had something they could take. And that was only the beginning. They stood there like time had paused for them and moved on without me. My father's hair had thinned, gone mostly gray, but his posture was the same, straight-backed, practiced, the kind of stance you learn when you believe the world owes you respect. My mother looked smaller, wrapped in a neat coat, her hands clasped together as if she were bracing herself for church rather than standing on the doorstep of the son she'd erased. Between them stood 2 strangers in tailored suits. Lawyers. I didn't need introductions to know that. Evan, my father said, as if he were testing whether the name still worked. I didn't invite them in. I didn't step aside. I just waited. "We're here to talk," my mother said, her eyes already scanning the apartment behind me, searching for proof of something she decided must exist. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "Mr. Calder, we represent your parents in a family matter that." "What do you want?" I asked. The words came out calm. That surprised me. I'd imagined anger, shaking hands, maybe the urge to slam the door. Instead, I felt detached, like I was watching a scene I'd already rehearsed years ago. My father exchanged a glance with the lawyer, then spoke. "We want to see the child." The sentence landed oddly, like it didn't belong in the room. "What child?" I asked. My mother's lips tightened. "Don't play games. We know about him." "Him?" I repeated. "You can stop pretending," my father said, irritation creeping into his voice. "We've done our research." I leaned against the doorframe, folding my arms. "I don't know what fantasy you've built, but there is no child." The color drained from my mother's face. "That's not funny," she said. "After everything." "After everything?" I cut in. "You don't get to use that phrase with me." One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Calder, if we could just come inside." "No," I said. "Say it here." My father sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. 25 years ago, your girlfriend was pregnant. That child would be an adult now. You don't get to erase that just because it's inconvenient." I looked at them, really looked at them, and something inside me clicked into place. "You threw me out," I said slowly. "You cut me off. You told me I wasn't your son anymore. Whatever you think happened after that was never yours to track." My mother swallowed. "We were protecting the family." "From me," I said. "And from responsibility." The lawyer opened the folder and held it out. "We filed a civil suit requesting recognition of lineage and access to information regarding the child's whereabouts." I almost laughed. "You sued me," I said. "We had no choice," my father replied. "You wouldn't answer our calls." "You didn't call," I said. "You sent investigators." That landed. My mother's eyes widened just enough to confirm it. "You really thought," I continued, "that you could erase me, then come back decades later and claim whatever version of my life suited you?" My father's jaw tightened. "We deserve to know." "No," I said. "You want something." Silence stretched between us. The hallway light buzzed faintly overhead. "What exactly are you after?" I asked. One of the lawyers shifted uncomfortably. My father hesitated half a second too long. That was all I needed. "Leave," I said. "Anything else you have to say can go through my attorney." "You don't even have one," my father snapped. I smiled for the first time that night. "That's where you're wrong." I closed the door before they could respond. Inside, my apartment felt too quiet. I stood there for a moment, my back against the door, listening for footsteps. None came. When I finally moved, it was to my desk, where my laptop waited. I didn't panic. I didn't call friends for reassurance. I called Samuel Brooke. Samuel had been my lawyer for over a decade, ever since Calder Systems stopped being a side operation and started attracting attention. He answered on the second ring. "They found you," he said, without preamble. "You knew?" I asked. "I suspected," he replied. "People who erase don't forget. They just wait until it's profitable to remember." I told him everything, the visit, the lawsuit, the demand. Samuel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. They're claiming grandparental rights through lineage, he said. But there's a problem. Which is? I asked. They'd have to acknowledge something they legally denied years ago. I felt my pulse quicken. Denied how? Give me a day, he said. Maybe two. There are records people forget about. Especially when they think they've buried them. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, staring at the city lights beyond my window. I thought about the rain that night in Ashford. About the sound of the lock. About how final it had felt. They'd made a mistake. They'd assumed I'd spent 25 years surviving. I hadn't. I'd spent them building. The next morning, messages started pouring in. Emails from unknown senders. Calls I didn't answer. One voicemail stood out, my mother's voice, trembling, trying to sound reasonable. We don't want to fight, she said. We just want what's fair. Fair. The word tasted bitter. By noon, Samuel called back. I found it, he said. Found what? I asked. A notarized document filed 2 days after you were thrown out, he said. Your parents formally relinquished all parental rights to you, and any future descendants. The room seemed to tilt. They signed away everything, he continued. To protect themselves. To make sure they were never legally responsible for you again. I closed my eyes. And now, Samuel added, they're suing for access to a child they legally declared would never exist. A slow, steady calm settled over me. So what happens now? I asked. Samuel's voice sharpened. Now we let them explain themselves. In public. I looked out at the city again, the reflection of my own face faint in the glass. They thought the past was something they could rewrite. They were about to learn it remembers perfectly. By the time the official notice arrived, I was ready. It came by courier, thick cream envelope, embossed seal, designed to intimidate before a single word was read. I let it sit unopened on my kitchen counter for a full hour, made coffee, answered emails, finished a conference call. When I finally slid it open, my hands were steady. Notice of civil action. Filed by my parents. Claim, obstruction, concealment of lineage, emotional damages. Emotional damages. I read that line twice, then laughed, an ugly, quiet sound that surprised even me. They hadn't spoken to me in 25 years. Not a birthday card. Not a voicemail. Not a question about whether I was alive. And now they were claiming pain. Samuel came over that evening. He spread the documents across my dining table like a dealer laying out cards. They're confident, he said. Too confident. Why? I asked. Because they think you're hiding something, he replied. They think there's a son. And they think that son is leverage. I leaned back. There isn't. I know, Samuel said. But belief doesn't need truth to be dangerous. He slid another folder toward me. This is the relinquishment file. Certified. Signed. Filed. Ironclad. I stared at the signatures. My father's name, written in the same sharp strokes I remembered from permission slips and report cards. My mother's beneath it, smaller, careful, unmistakable. They erased me, I said quietly. Yes, Samuel replied. And that erasure is now your shield. Over the next week, the pressure escalated. Old neighbors from Ashford somehow found my number. A former church acquaintance sent a long email about forgiveness and family unity. A tabloid blogger emailed my assistant asking for comment on a possible secret heir. Someone was feeding the story. Samuel confirmed it 2 days later. They've hired a PR firm, he said. They're framing this as a reunion denied. Estranged parents seeking closure. Closure, I repeated. Convenient. They're fishing, he continued. They want you to react emotionally. Slip up. Admit something that doesn't exist. I didn't react. Instead, I prepared. We filed a formal response to the lawsuit, attaching the relinquishment document as Exhibit A. We included timestamps, notarization logs, and county records. No commentary. No emotion. Just facts. The media response was immediate and chaotic. Headlines conflicted. Disowned son accused of hiding child. Parents who abandoned teen now sue him 25 years later. Public opinion fractured. And then my parents made their first real mistake. They requested an emergency hearing. Samuel read the filing twice, then looked up at me with something close to admiration. They're rushing, he said. That means they're afraid. Of what? I asked. Of losing control of the narrative, he said. An emergency hearing puts them under oath sooner. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic benches. No sweeping columns. Just wood, fluorescent light, and the faint smell of old paper. My parents sat across the aisle from me. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father stared straight ahead, jaw set, like this was another business negotiation he intended to win. The judge, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, skimmed the file before looking up. "Mr. and Mrs. Calder," she said, "you are requesting immediate relief based on alleged concealment of a descendant. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," my father said. "Our son has denied us access to our grandchild." The judge turned her gaze to me. "Mr. Calder? There is no child," I said evenly. My mother inhaled sharply. The judge raised a hand. "You will all speak when addressed." She flipped a page. "I see here a relinquishment of parental rights dated 25 years ago." My father stiffened. "Mr. Calder," she continued, "did you sign this document?" "Yes," he said. "Mrs. Calder?" "Yes," my mother whispered. The judge tapped the page. "This document explicitly terminates all parental claims, including claims to future descendants. Are you disputing its validity?" Silence. Samuel stood. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs are attempting to assert rights they legally renounced. There is no child. And even if there were, they forfeited any claim decades ago." The judge looked back at my parents. "Why did you file this suit?" My father opened his mouth, then closed it. My mother spoke instead. "We just want to make things right," she said. "We made mistakes." The judge's eyes softened, just a fraction. Then hardened again. "Court is not a place for emotional repair," she said. "It is a place for law." She turned to Samuel. "I am dismissing the emergency request. We will proceed under standard schedule." Relief flickered across Samuel's face. But panic flashed across my parents. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. "Evan," someone shouted. "Is there a secret child?" I didn't answer. Neither did my parents. That silence spoke louder than anything. That night, Samuel called me from his office. "They're desperate now," he said. "And desperate people dig." "Let them," I replied. 2 days later, the digging began. A private investigator showed up at my office building asking for records. Another contacted my college alumni office. Someone tried to access sealed medical archives in another state. Every move left a trail. Samuel tracked them all. "Your father isn't just looking for a child," he said one evening. "He's looking for proof of relevance." "Explain," I said. "He's lost status," Samuel replied. "His business partners know about the lawsuit. His church knows. People are asking questions. He thinks reclaiming you, or a grandchild, will restore his image." I closed my eyes. "I'm not an image." To him, Samuel said gently, "You never stopped being one." The deposition notices arrived shortly after. My parents would be questioned. Under oath. On record. The night before, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because memories kept resurfacing. The rain. The trash bag. The sound of the lock. I realized something then. They weren't suing me because I had something they wanted. They were suing me because I had survived without them. And that, to them, was unforgivable. The depositions lasted 2 days. I wasn't present, but Samuel briefed me afterward. "My mother cried," he said. "A lot." "And my father?" I asked. "He contradicted himself 3 times," Samuel replied. "Once about why you were expelled. Once about the document. Once about whether he believed a child existed." "That helps us," I said. "It helps us destroy credibility," Samuel confirmed. Then he paused. "There's more," he added. "What?" I asked. "They admitted something," he said. "Off record, but captured." My chest tightened. "Admitted what?" "That when they threw you out," Samuel said, "they were advised by their attorney to cut ties permanently. To protect assets. Reputation. Future inheritance claims." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "They didn't just abandon me," I said. "They planned it." "Yes," Samuel replied. "And now that plan is about to become public." The court date was set for 3 months later. Plenty of time for stories to leak. Plenty of time for reputations to crack. And plenty of time for them to realize. The son they erased had learned how to write endings. By the time the full hearing date was announced, the story had stopped belonging to my parents. It belonged to the public. The narrative they had tried to sell, heartbroken parents, denied a grandchild, collapsed under the weight of documents, timelines, and their own words. Every outlet that covered the case began digging backward instead of forward. And the further they dug, the uglier it got. A regional paper ran a headline that made Samuel text me at 6 a.m. "Court records show Calder parents legally disowned son at 17. That article changed everything. Within hours, radio shows picked it up. Comment sections exploded. Former classmates from Ashford started posting screenshots of old church newsletters, fundraiser photos, and, most damning, an archived announcement from 25 years ago. Richard and Elaine Calder announced that their son Evan has chosen a different path and will no longer be part of the Calder household. Chosen. That word was doing a lot of lying. I watched the fallout from my office, blinds half drawn, coffee untouched. My phone buzzed nonstop, but I didn't answer any calls except Samuel's. "They're panicking," he said. "Your father called his former attorney this morning. The same one who drafted the relinquishment." "And?" I asked. "He's refusing to help," Samuel replied. "Conflict of interest. And he doesn't want his name back in the news." I let out a slow breath. Good. But panic doesn't just make people retreat. Sometimes it makes them reckless. 2 nights later, someone broke into my past. Not my house. My history. Nina called me just after midnight. "Evan," she said, voice tight, "someone tried to access sealed records from Idaho. Medical archives. They used an old authorization form with your mother's signature." I sat up in bed. "Did it work?" "No," she said. "The request was denied. But the attempt was logged." I stared at the ceiling, anger rising sharp and fast. They weren't just suing anymore. They were trying to manufacture proof. Samuel confirmed it the next morning. "They're fishing for anything," he said. "Clinic records. Hospital logs. Even termination paperwork." "They know there was no child," I said. "They don't need a child," he replied. "They need ambiguity." That word again. Ambiguity. Something they could bend. I agreed to Samuel's next move without hesitation. "We counter," I said. "Aggressively." And we did. We filed a motion accusing my parents of harassment, fraudulent investigation, and abuse of process. Attached were the access attempt logs, time-stamped and verified. We also submitted sworn affidavits from 2 former neighbors who testified that my parents had publicly disowned me and told the community I was no longer their concern. The judge granted an immediate protective order. My parents were forbidden from contacting me directly or indirectly. No investigators. No intermediaries. The silence that followed felt different. Heavier. Like the air before a storm breaks. 2 weeks later, the deposition transcripts were unsealed. That's when everything truly turned. My father's words were printed exactly as he'd said them, stripped of tone, stripped of context. Question: Did you believe your son had a child when you filed the lawsuit? Answer: We suspected it. Question: Based on what evidence? Answer: Circumstances. Question: What circumstances? Answer: He never denied the pregnancy at the time. Question: Did you ever ask if there was a child? Answer: No. Question: Why not? Answer: We didn't feel it was our place. That answer destroyed him. Commentators didn't miss it. Neither did the judge. Then came my mother's testimony. She cried. She spoke about regret. About prayer. About wanting forgiveness. And then she said the sentence that ended any sympathy she might have earned. "We only wanted our family name back." The room had gone silent when she said it. Even the court reporter paused. That line made headlines. Not the lawsuit. Not the alleged grandchild. The name. People understood that. People understood vanity. From that moment on, the case stopped being about whether I was hiding something. It became about what they had done to protect themselves. A week before trial, Samuel came into my office holding a thin manila folder. "This came from an unexpected source," he said. "Who?" I asked. He hesitated. "Your mother." My chest tightened. "What?" "She dropped it off at my firm," he said. "No note. Just this." Inside were old documents I'd never seen before. Financial records. Property transfers. And one letter. Dated 2 days after the night they kicked me out. It was written by my father. Addressed to a financial advisor. "Our son has been removed from the family structure. Ensure all future assets are protected from potential claims tied to his decisions." I read it twice. Then a third time. They hadn't just disowned me. They had erased me strategically. Samuel watched my face carefully. "This helps us," he said. "But you don't have to use it." "Yes," I replied. "I do." The trial began on a Monday. The courthouse was packed. Not because of me, but because the story had grown too big to ignore. My parents arrived separately. My father looked smaller than I remembered. My mother older. Neither looked at me. The judge laid out the scope clearly. "This court is not here to restore relationships," she said. "It is here to determine whether this lawsuit was filed in good faith." The first day was procedural. The second day was brutal. Samuel walked the jury through the relinquishment document line by line. He showed them the signatures. The dates. The clauses that stripped my parents of any claim to my life, past or future. Then he played a recording. My father's voice, from the deposition. "We believed distance would correct him." Samuel paused the audio. "Correct him from what?" he asked. Silence. Then came the Idaho records. Not to prove a child existed. But to prove one did not. A physician's affidavit. Clinic confirmations. Time-stamped and certified. No birth. No adoption. No concealment. Just absence. My parents' attorney tried to argue emotional harm. Samuel stood and said, calmly, "You cannot be harmed by something you chose to abandon." The judge didn't interrupt. When my parents took the stand again, they unraveled. My father contradicted himself. My mother cried harder. Neither could explain why they waited 25 years to reach out. Neither could explain why their first contact involved lawyers. And then Samuel introduced the letter. The one about protecting assets. The courtroom felt like it tilted. My father stared at the table. My mother whispered, "That wasn't meant for this." Samuel replied evenly, "Intent doesn't erase impact." The final blow came when the judge addressed them directly. "You terminated your parental rights," she said. "You forfeited your role. You cannot reclaim what you discarded simply because it benefits you now." She dismissed their case. With prejudice. Meaning it could never be filed again. Outside the courthouse, reporters surged forward. Microphones. Cameras. Shouts. "Evan, do you forgive them? Is there really no child?" I stopped, turned, and answered one question. "There was never a child," I said. "Only a lie they were hoping would save them." Then I walked away. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. 3 days later, Samuel called me with a tone I'd never heard before. "They're broke," he said. "What?" I asked. "They leveraged everything," he explained. "Properties. Retirement accounts. All to fund this case and the PR campaign." I closed my eyes. "And now?" I asked. "Now," Samuel said, "they're exposed." My parents didn't lose in court. They collapsed outside it. Creditors moved in. Business partners pulled out. Their social circle vanished almost overnight. The same people who once praised them now avoided them. And still, they didn't apologize. Not once. The final message came in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sentence, written in my father's hand. "You didn't have to destroy us." I read it. Then I placed it in the same folder as the relinquishment document. And closed it. Because the truth was simple. I hadn't destroyed them. I had survived them. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. The silence after the verdict felt louder than the courtroom ever had. For weeks, my life had been filled with motion, motions filed, calls returned, timelines dissected, words sharpened until they could cut. Then suddenly, everything stopped. No more court dates. No more legal strategies. No more headlines screaming my name like it belonged to someone else. Just quiet. I thought that quiet would feel like relief. Instead, it felt unfamiliar. I took time off work for the first time in years. Not a vacation, just space. Mornings stretched longer. Coffee cooled untouched. I caught myself listening for sounds that weren't there, like my phone buzzing or Samuel's voice outlining another crisis. Nothing came. One afternoon, as rain tapped lightly against the windows, I opened the old box I'd carried through every move since I was 17. Inside were things I'd never sorted, school papers, a cracked watch, a folded bus ticket from the night I left Ashford. At the bottom was a photograph I barely remembered being taken. It was me, standing outside Pine Hollow Lodge, hair too long, jacket too thin, smiling in a way that didn't quite reach my eyes. Dorothy Hale stood beside me, one hand on my shoulder, her expression firm and protective. I realized then something I'd never allowed myself to admit. I had survived because someone else chose me when my parents didn't. That realization softened something inside me. Not forgiveness, but clarity. A week later, Samuel invited me to lunch. He looked tired in a way that suggested he hadn't slept much since the trial ended. "You don't owe me this," I said as we sat down. "I know," he replied. "I wanted to see how you were holding up." I considered the question carefully. "I'm lighter," I said finally. "But also heavier. Like I've been carrying anger so long I forgot what comes after." Samuel nodded. "After is harder. Anger gives structure." "What comes after?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Choice." That word followed me home. Choice. My parents had made theirs decades ago. So had I, even if I hadn't named it at the time. Now I had another. 2 months passed. The media moved on, hungry for fresher scandals. My parents faded from public view completely. I heard through distant channels that they'd sold their house. That my father's health had declined. That my mother had stopped attending church. None of that moved me the way it once would have. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. Not from them. From a legal office in Pennsylvania. Inside was a brief notice. Richard Calder had died from a stroke. There was no drama in the words. No apology attached. Just a factual statement and a line informing me that, despite prior relinquishment, I was being notified as next of kin. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after reading it. I felt nothing. And then, unexpectedly, I felt grief, not for him, but for the version of a father I'd once hoped he could be. I didn't attend the funeral. I didn't need to. What surprised me more was the second letter that arrived weeks later. From my mother. Handwritten. Shaky. Evan. I don't know if you will read this. I don't know if I deserve that much. Your father believed strength meant control. I followed because I was afraid of losing him. I lost you instead. I won't ask forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what we did. Elaine. I folded the letter carefully. I didn't write back. But I didn't tear it up either. Some things don't need a response to be complete. Spring arrived quietly that year. One evening, I drove out to the edge of town where Pine Hollow Lodge still stood, weathered but standing. Dorothy had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving the place to a small foundation that provided housing for kids aging out of foster care. I walked the ground slowly, memories rising like ghosts that didn't hurt anymore. In the office, a young woman sat behind the desk, flipping through paperwork. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I used to work here," I said. She smiled. "Dorothy talked about you." I swallowed. "What did she say?" "That some people come here broken," she said. "And leave knowing their worth." I stepped outside and sat on the porch where I'd once eaten soup at 2 in the morning, unsure if I'd survive the week. I had. More than that, I had built something. Not wealth. Not status. But stability. Later that night, I made a decision. I called Samuel. "I want to start something," I said. "A lawsuit?" he asked, half joking. "No," I replied. "A fund." "For what?" he asked. "For kids who get thrown out," I said. "Not just money. Legal help. Housing. Counseling. Someone to stand there the first night when everything collapses." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "Dorothy would have liked that," he said. I smiled. The Evan Calder Trust launched quietly 6 months later. No press release. No headlines. Just work. The first grant went to a 17-year-old boy who'd been sleeping in his car after his parents kicked him out for refusing to end a relationship they didn't approve of. When I handed him the keys to a small studio apartment, he asked me why I was helping. I told him the truth. Because someone once did the same for me. That night, as I locked my door and turned out the lights, I thought about the moment my parents stood on my doorstep years ago, demanding to see a child that never existed. They thought they were returning to claim something they'd lost. What they never understood was this. The moment they threw me out, they lost the right to define my story. And the moment I stopped waiting for their approval, I finally began living it. Before I sleep each night, I still remember the rain. But it no longer sounds like abandonment. It sounds like the beginning. If this story stayed with you until the end, do me a small favor, support the channel so more unheard stories can find their way to the people who need them. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and share this with someone who might need to hear that starting over is possible. Your small action helps stories like this keep reaching further.